Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Radio.
Hey, Dabo Sweeney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
This is entertainment. People are paid to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in. Oh!
People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting wide, man.
We welcome you into Drive Time. A Wednesday afternoon in central New York. And a whole lot to discuss. Breaking news last night in the Syracuse basketball coaching search. One name, one of the potential frontrunners, according to some, one of the shortlist candidates, a guy that we thought Syracuse was circling. The South Florida head coach, Bryan Hodgson, is out of the running for the Syracuse basketball job. Jeff Goodman reporting he turned down the Syracuse job. Did he get an offer? Did he truly turn it down? The timing of it, very wonky. Doesn't really feel like Jeff Goodman or Bryan Hodgson's camp would need to come out and say that he turned down the Syracuse job if it was truly him turning it down. But who knows? We could run rampant on speculation on really what happened here and what side of the story we are getting. But it does seem like Bryan Hodgson, a guy that a lot of you wanted, and a guy that made a decent amount of sense to be the next Syracuse basketball head coach, is not going to be the next Syracuse basketball head coach. And that leaves us trying to figure out what that all means today and what could be next for Syracuse basketball. How panicked should we be? How frustrated should we be? How much of this was the resources NIL conversation, which we have been having a lot on this show, and I have said throughout the process here, throughout the last couple months, that the most important question a coach is going to ask the now new athletic director, Bryan Blair, is what's my number? What's the payroll? What's my roster budget? What's my salary? What's my assistant coaches pool in terms of salary? And the evidence is stacking up a little bit here that Syracuse might be behind, say, a Providence in that regard. That's at least the reporting from Jeff Goodman of the Field of 68, who broke the news last night. A couple others kind of came in over the top and confirmed it, that Bryan Hodgson, according to Jeff Goodman, turned down the Syracuse job. Then it was Syracuse.com saying he is out of the running, according to a source they got. Whether it was really a true offer that was made that he declined, we may never know. It will be fascinating. I'm sure Bryan Blair, the new athletic director, who, by the way, is going to have a press conference and speak publicly as the Syracuse AD for the first time tomorrow. And you can watch that press conference, and you can watch it on QSportsTalk.com tomorrow or our Q Sports Talk YouTube page. However you watch our shows or listen to our shows, you will get at 10 a.m. tomorrow the new athletic director, Bryan Blair's first public comments, where he will certainly be asked questions. One obvious question is going to be, hey, did you talk to Bryan Hodgson? Did you offer Bryan Hodgson a job? And did he decline it? And most likely, Bryan Blair is probably going to play the card of, I'm not going to speak about our ongoing search or any candidates there. There's really an easy out there for him if he wants to go that route. Potentially, maybe there's a small chance, and it will be fascinating how he handles this. It will be fascinating just to hear from Bryan Blair for the first time as the Syracuse AD. There's maybe a small chance that he wants to kind of save face a little bit, set the record straight, if that is truly what happened, and it was more of a mutual ending of the discussion between Syracuse and Bryan Hodgson. Regardless of what exactly happened here, it seems that Bryan Hodgson was expecting more from a resources financial package standpoint from Syracuse. That's what Jeff Goodman is reporting, and we have spent a lot of time talking about that, mostly because we knew that that was going to have a big say in the type of coach that Syracuse could bring in. And I mentioned it a lot in regards to Josh Schertz, and it's a fascinating time in college basketball because arguably the two hottest names on the coaching carousel, the two hottest coaching candidates this offseason, Josh Schertz of St. Louis, Bryan Hodgson of South Florida. Seems like Bryan Hodgson might stay put at South Florida. Seems like they have come in with a very lucrative offer, according to Jeff Goodman. And he might just sit out this cycle and say, you know what? I got South Florida as an 11 seed in the tournament. We might have a pretty darn good shot of beating Louisville without their top player. We might be kind of starting something here. It's been just 1 year. I got this raise already 1 year in, and it seems like we don't know exactly what the figure is, but Goodman's saying it could be similar to a Josh Schertz contract extension that he got, which that was reported in the $3.3 million range per year. I believe it was 6 years, $20 million for Josh Schertz to stay at St. Louis, which he is going to do. So just fascinating that 2026 is not 2010, it's not 2015, it's not 2020 in college athletics. There's pre-NIL, and there is the era we're in now. And the Syracuse job is unfortunately not what it would have been in 2010. I have no doubt that Bryan Hodgson would have jumped at the opportunity to go to Syracuse in 2010 and probably in 2015 as well. And when I say that the Syracuse job is not what it would have been in 2010 or 2015, some of you would probably quickly raise your hand and say, well, that's because Jim Boeheim overstayed his welcome and we started to decline, and this is all Jim Boeheim's fault. I am against that pretty staunchly. Obviously, the program was declining a little bit when Jim Boeheim left, and it wasn't like Adrian Autry was handed a great situation. But the number one reason why I'm saying that in 2026, the Syracuse job is not as powerful, not considered as strong of a job as in 2010, 2015, is because we're in the NIL era now. And we've said this a lot. A lot of our guests have said this. Damon Amendolara was great on Orange Nation earlier today. He said it. It's very obvious that the number one thing a coach cares about right now is the budget, is the payroll. That is the most important thing for determining how strong of a job it is. And I think it's a fascinating time in college basketball when you consider that the St. Louis head coach said, no, I don't want to jump to a high major job right now. I'm going to wait for maybe one of those top 10, top 15 jobs in the country to pop open. And if one of those isn't open, I'll just stay where I'm at right now because St. Louis is one of the jobs where resources and expectations correlate pretty well. Seems like South Florida, resources and expectations correlate pretty well. It seems like the fear nationally for the Syracuse job is, do the resources and expectations line up? Can I go there, and will I have enough resources to win at the level that the fan base expects me to win? We said all along that this cycle was going to be very telling because Syracuse basketball in the last 50-plus years has not been in a position where they have opened their doors and done a quote-unquote national search for their men's basketball head coach. We didn't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers still on who Syracuse is going to bring in, what they would be paying them, what the roster capital will be next season. And maybe Brian Blair will have some answers tomorrow at the press conference when he speaks at 10 a.m. And again, you can watch that on QSportsTalk.com live when the new AD talks at 10 a.m. tomorrow. But we are off and running on Drive Time. This is our Burdick BMW of Cicero Opening Drive. Obviously, the phone lines are open throughout our hour with you today, and I'm sure a lot of you have thoughts and a lot of you want to chime in. We welcome your thoughts on the phone lines at 315-437-7644. I do want to start the show today explaining why I am not personally panicking over the news last night. Could partially be because I wasn't totally surprised. I was in the camp that I thought Jeff Goodman was reporting what he was hearing for a reason. And when Jeff Goodman said Providence is the front runner, I was not one of those people that thought, oh, that's just the agent driving up the bargain. Now, certainly, Jeff Goodman probably got that information from Bryan Hodgson's agent or someone in Hodgson's camp. And it seems like he has a close relationship with Hodgson. And we have to keep in mind that it's maybe that side of the story that we are getting from Jeff Goodman. And we might not know the full story here. But regardless, there's a reason why we've had this conversation a lot about NIL. And it didn't necessarily shock me to see that Bryan Hodgson is not going to be the next Syracuse basketball head coach. I was a little fearful of this all along. When we see the phone lines are ringing, we'll get to you as we get rolling here on our Burdick BMW of Cicero Opening Drive. Here are two reasons, though, why I am not personally panicking today. One, I don't think that Bryan Hodgson is really in a completely different tier or should be viewed as a different level of candidate than the other candidates we've talked about for Syracuse. Personally, and this might come across to some of you like sour grapes, or I'm just sort of lowering who Bryan Hodgson is because now I know he's out of the running, but I have maintained this throughout, and I've said it throughout, and hopefully if you've been listening to most of my shows, you understand that this is not me making a U-turn on this. I feel Bryan Hodgson is a good candidate. I never really thought he was a slam dunk, no-brainer hire for Syracuse. He's kind of a wild card off the court, it seems like. There's stories you hear there. I didn't know how well of a fit it would be at Syracuse, his personality. So that's part of it. But more importantly, he's only 38 years old. He's only been a head coach for 3 years, and I said a lot that if he came to Syracuse and he struggled, it would have been pretty easy to a couple years into him struggling go, why did we hire this guy who was so unproven? So it's not a great overall candidate field, this coaching cycle. He was one of the best candidates. But I don't think that Jerry McNamara, who's in his first NCAA tournament for Siena this year, in his second year as a head coach, and is slightly older than Bryan Hodgson, should be viewed as a clear-cut drop-off from Hodgson. Some of you feel that way, probably because of where you lie on the in-family, outside-the-family discussion. And if you firmly believe they need to go outside the family, that raised the profile of Bryan Hodgson for sure. But a lot of you have been doing the blind resume of Jerry McNamara or coming forward and saying, why don't we look at the Mount St. Mary's coach, or why don't we look at another coach in that league or another coach from a smaller league? Let's do the blind resume for Bryan Hodgson. If you would have told me 6-7 months ago that he would be the clear-cut top candidate, no doubter, everyone in the country wanted him. Obviously, you would say, well, he's taken South Florida to a much better season than you were expecting. But I'm saying, if you would have said, here's his resume, and that's going to be the guy that stands out above the rest, I would have been surprised by that. He's had 2 years at Arkansas State that went pretty well for sure, and he did a very nice job at Arkansas State, and he did a nice job for sure this year at South Florida, and is still doing a nice job as they're in the NCAA tournament. And as I said, they might beat Louisville tomorrow. I think they have a pretty good chance. So he was certainly a good candidate, but I think Jerry McNamara is also a good candidate. I think Mike Hopkins is also a good candidate. I think there are a lot of good candidates out there. And I just never viewed it as Hodgson was clearly plan A and then a drop-off for the other candidates. So that's reason number one why I'm not panicking necessarily today. Reason number two, I do think Brian Blair is a good hire as the athletic director. And the take I really don't understand right now is bashing Brian Blair or blaming him for what transpired last night, or the idea that Brian Hodgson is out of the running, turned down Syracuse, and that falls on Brian Blair, the new AD, who literally just took the job. Syracuse does need to improve its resources, its financial package. I agree with everything that Jeff Goodman reported from a standpoint of they have to get a little bit better from where they were certainly 2 years ago, but even from last year to maybe meet the expectations of the fan base. Brian Blair was brought in to do that, and that's why I'm optimistic that they will get better in the resources category because he has a track record of doing that. And I mentioned when they hired him, that was the most impressive part of his resume. So I'm not blaming Brian Hodgson, or Brian Blair, I should say, for anything that happened to this point in the coaching search. And I think it's irrational to put it at his feet. Let's give him some time to do what he's supposed to do, which is enhance the fundraising. And let's just let it play out a little bit with him as the new athletic director. I'm already seeing tweets, fire Brian Blair already. That's crazy to me. Don't give up on him before he even gets a chance to prove that he can come in here and change things and make things better. Let's give him a chance. And I happen to think that some of the issues and some of the reasons why the Syracuse job is maybe not top 10 or top 15 or top 20, and I've said this throughout, I think it's more like top 25, top 30 right now in the country. The biggest reason is the payroll. And I do think that Brian Blair, the new AD, is going to help Syracuse get in a better spot payroll-wise. Let's go to Rob in Connecticut, who's going to lead us off today on Drive Time. Hey, Rob.
Yo, my man, how's it going?
It's going all right. How you doing? How was your reaction to the news last night?
Okay, so here's the deal, right? And I'm glad you asked me because that's what I wanted to talk about. Of course, I'm sure the call screener told you. So, you know what? I look at it this way. I think it's not even a silver lining. I think this is a platinum lining. Well, first of all, Brian Hodgson, who I'd never heard of before like a month ago, that name has been in the queue before our new AD even arrived there. So, in a way, this clears the baffles. Now we don't have to deal with some coaching hire who I think we had a predisposition with because, he's been in the back of our minds for so long. So because this guy is out of the picture, now our new AD gets a clean slate. It's like tabula rasa. You know what I mean? So with that said, this is good. This is a good thing. And anybody who says otherwise probably doesn't even really know, who the heck this guy is, and they're just talking with talking points, which is what most people do these days anyway with, social media. So, I think this is a good thing for Syracuse.
Well, you clearly probably didn't want him to be the next head coach then, right, Rob? He wasn't at the top of your list, I'm guessing.
Okay. No, I'm sure I would have been open-minded, but the point I'm trying to make is that if you think about it, the AD had nothing to do with this. So let him, so Brian Hodgson, I guess the new AD probably wasn't thinking about Brian Hodgson as his first choice when he took the job. It's probably, if I'm the AD, I'm relieved that my fan base isn't obsessed with some guy who's only been coaching for 3 years, as you so well put it. You know what I mean? So this is a good thing. Yeah, pardon the enthusiasm. I think it's not bad. I mean, if anybody's, I saw there was a podcast I saw early by Damon Amandolaro, and he's like, this is a rude awakening for Syracuse. Is it really? I think this is not really a big deal. I think, we got to get our money in order.
Yeah. But we've been saying that, right?
Yeah, that's a record that never ends, right? But the fact No, this is a good thing. It really is. And, I'm sure good luck to Bryan Hodgson. No ill will toward him, but you know what? Let our AD do a real coaching search without some, predetermined outcome of like three coaches. Is it going to be Bryan Hodgson? Is it going to be Jerry McNamara? Is it going to be, let him make up the mind. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is good. It takes, now we don't have that narrative going forward. So I think this is good. What do you think?
I don't know if I would say it's a good thing. I think it just...
Okay. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I hear you.
I mean, I think it just depends on your opinion of him specifically. So I was not, as I just said, I was not viewing him as the clear-cut, above the rest candidate. But I don't know if I can say it's a good thing that if he did in fact turn down the job, there's obviously some concern there that Syracuse as a job is not at the level that we thought it was or we hoped it was. If Bryan Hodgson, the South Florida coach, believes, no, I'm not going there because they don't have the resources, then I can't get around to the idea that it's a good thing. But
sure.
I don't think it's full panic, as I said. I do think that they will have other good candidates to look at. And who knows exactly what they will gather from a roster and payroll standpoint. And we just got to let it play out a little bit and see how this thing plays out.
Right. And you know what's frustrating? Here's the deal. Syracuse has more wins if we didn't have a coach who didn't call a timeout or who did not call a timeout at the end of the game. And we'd have more wins if it just wasn't for coaching. So the program would be more desirable if we didn't have such an incompetent head coach to begin with. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know what I mean? It's like it's so frustrating that we had someone so inept with the, in coaching, how to manage an in-game, how to manage in-game, and how to manage your timeouts. Okay, anyway, I'm going to let you go,
All right, Rob.
But you know what I'm saying, right? Have a good one.
All right, you too. Rob in Connecticut. And look, we're getting some commenters saying this isn't about NIL, this isn't about the resources, and I'm happy to continue this conversation in our Q Sports Talk chat. I would like to know if, and I know Philly's Most Wanted is the commenter, and I've been going back and forth with him a little bit today, and I'll just say straight up, Philly, I'm not looking to argue with you, and I'm not really saying you're wrong on this one in particular. To me, where I'm coming from, if you're Bryan Hodgson and you have the opportunity to coach at Syracuse in 2010, 2015, he probably would have said yes to that opportunity. Now, if you disagree with that, then we can continue the conversation. And I encourage anyone to call in today that maybe thinks this doesn't come down to resources, because I made the point a couple of shows ago that I just feel like if you stack up the Syracuse job and the Providence job, and now let's group in South Florida as well, Syracuse checks pretty much every box over those two from a prestige standpoint, from a facilities, fan base, just everything that you could line up in terms of, is this a better job or not? They check the box except for resources. So I guess the question is, if Bryan Hodgson is not interested in the Syracuse job and it's not resources, what is the reason that he would turn down the job or say no or not be interested at all in the Syracuse job to begin with? And it just feels like the evidence here is that the resources is holding Syracuse up a little bit. I'm not saying that it's holding them up dramatically, and we might be overreacting a little bit to just this specific take that Bryan Hodgson says it's resources, or Jeff Goodman's putting out there that it's resources. But it just feels like the Providence and the Syracuse job, Syracuse should be ahead of Providence. And we know that Providence spent more on their roster last year. I feel confident in saying that, and I feel confident in saying that Providence did spend more on their roster last year than Syracuse. So we'll break because I'm already 25 minutes into our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive, and I don't want to get too behind, but we can continue that conversation throughout our show today. If you feel like resources isn't at play here, we can hash that out. Maybe we're overreacting a little bit to the resources right now, but I think in general that is the number one reason still why a coach decides, is that a worthy job or not? 315-437-7644. We'll get some more phone calls as we return on Drive Time.
Syracuse University.
Oh, yeah, here go the phone lines. Poor Kyle. Let me catch up. Again, Philly, I wasn't trying to call you out. Hopefully I made that clear. I do want to know, like, what do you think is the reason if it's not resources? Didn't want to deal with a meddling Mello and a looming Boeheim. I firmly believe that if Bryan Hodgson took the Syracuse job, and if anyone takes the job that's outside the family, their first point is probably going to be in the press conference, or one of their first points is going to be like, Jim Boeheim's a GOAT, and I can't wait to interact with him and be around Coach Boeheim, and he's got an open door to. I don't really get why any coach would not welcome in Boeheim or his influence on the program. Homie, exercise some common sense. SU called shirts. They aren't calling him without knowing they'll have money. I mean, they're obviously going to call Josh Shirts. I don't really understand. Like, obviously they're going to try and get him. Just like 8 or something. Something like that, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, if the logic is like they probably should have called Jay Wright too. I don't. Josh Shirts said no to the Syracuse job because of resources, probably, Philly. Like, what reason would you just think no one would ever be interested in the Syracuse job, and the resources don't have a factor here? It is a little bit of a forest green. Get some St. Patty's Day in it a little bit. Did SU call Shirts? I'm assuming yes. 2, would SU waste their time and embarrass themselves calling Shirts without knowing the money is there? I mean, they would call Josh Shirts just because that's what I just answered that. Just because that's what you should do. I don't like, do you think that Providence doesn't have more money than Syracuse? Do you think that Hodgson would have taken the job in 2010 or 2015 or before NIL? And I guess is your take that, like, Hodgson just had no interest in Syracuse forever and the resources had no factor in it? Because I just find that hard to believe. Yeah, it's a good point. Cuse in the house. I'm sure that they tried to gather as much money as possible and called him. Lou, I think Providence was $10.5 million on their roster budget specifically last year. Syracuse was just under 8. Yeah, Philly, I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree, because I think that if they did want Bryan, do you think they just didn't want Hodgson? Is that kind of what you're basing it on? If they did want Bryan Hodgson, I'm sure that they would have gathered some donors and gotten the number up and then gone to him with their best available number. Oh, the phone's ringing. You just get it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how they handle it, Spatchy and Louise.
ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
We continue on Drive Time, Wednesday afternoon. Lots to discuss. Bryan Hodgson turning down the Syracuse job, according to Jeff Goodman last night. Bryan Hodgson out of the running for the Syracuse job, the current head coach of South Florida. Where will the Orange go now? Why did he turn down the job? Who should they hire? How worried are we today? Are we panicking over the news? What is your takeaway from the news last night? We are taking your phone calls here this afternoon, 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call into any of our programs. We will have Bryan Blair, the new athletic director for Syracuse's first public comments as the Syracuse AD, or I guess first public press conference as the Syracuse AD, in his introductory press conference that will be live on our airwaves and our YouTube page and our QSportsTalk.com Twitch stream tomorrow at 10 a.m. So put that in your calendar. If you're working tomorrow morning, you got something to look forward to, as we will have Bryan Blair's full press conference live at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Stefan in Utica, who always cheers me up. And Stefan, what is on your mind today?
Well, hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great, Stefan. Better that you have called in. How are you doing?
Very good. Now, if I'm Syracuse officials, I'd attend the Duke Siena game when it comes up. I believe that's tomorrow.
Yep.
And whatever happens at the end of that game, I go to GMAC, Jerry McNamara of Siena, and see if he wants this head coaching job.
Certainly seems like they're going to give him a call, Stefan. Certainly seems like he is a logical candidate. We can't rule out that maybe he's not the front runner right now, though. We thought we knew everything that was going down in the AD search, and that's not what happened. A lot of you thought that Hodgson was the guy, and it seems like he's not the guy coming to Syracuse. So let's see how it plays out. And I don't know right now if it is Jerry McNamara, but if they do go that route, I feel like there's a lot to get excited about if they did hire Jerry McNamara. I don't think that he is a drop-off from Bryan Hodgson, and we'll leave it at that for now. Let's go to Tim in Eastwood, who is next up on Drive Time. Hey, Tim.
Hey, I agree with you, Tim. I don't think he's a drastic drop-off. You know, these people that I could go either way as far as inside, outside the family. These people that insist on outside the family, I don't really take them, most of them, too serious. I think a lot of them don't even contribute to NIL. As I said last year when it was an issue, and I continue to say that if you don't contribute to NIL, then, I don't think you should have an opinion, because that's what's driving the bus, especially with college basketball these days. I will say I wonder if the NIL situation, the big donors aren't necessarily in on an unknown person like Hodgson, but are more in on the known candidates of GMAC and Mike Hopkins, especially from the former players, especially former NBA player group that have, some money to throw at the program.
Yeah. I think you could be onto something with the former NBA players or the alums of the program, but it does seem like some of the biggest donors are the Lallies, and they had a relationship with him. So I think the Lallies probably like a Mike Hopkins or a Jerry McNamara as well, and I'm not so sure that they viewed him as like the clear-cut number one, and we don't really know, but we do know that they were going to games down there, and they probably were completely fine if it was Hodgson.
Right. I'll also say this, that as a former, and I'm a pain to say this, when Orange United went, under in the fall, that was something that was just unbelievable to happen. And I think it's embarrassing for SU not to have a collective at this point. So as soon as possible, I think Bryan Blair, one of his first things is to get a collective going, because I know a lot of people that are very disappointed that not to be, they want to contribute, but they want to, it seems like the football NIL is more of a big money thing. They want, checks for thousands of dollars.
Tim, I don't think they don't have a collective right now. You could make an argument that they could be a little bit better at presenting, here's the collective, here's how you donate, and maybe the SU football NIL is accomplishing that a little bit more. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. But I don't think that like Orange United went under and it was a complete flop. I think they just tried to streamline things is how I remember them kind of changing around the collective. So they certainly are in a position where they have a collective and it's gotten better. But obviously, yes, the next AD is known for fundraising and generating donations, and that's where they need to make progress for sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for checking in. Tim in Eastwood, a fellow Tim with some decent takes there. We appreciate him for checking in. Let's go to Pat in Syracuse. This could be a fun, long chat with our guy, Pat in Syracuse. What's up, Pat?
I don't think I'm going to get the intro that you gave Stefan, though. Tim? I mean,
I know.
It kind of hurts my feelings.
I did get really excited for Stefan. I don't know. It was good to hear from my guy, Stefan, today. He's always positive.
His takes are short and sweet, right?
Exactly. He's a good leadoff hitter, Pat. Now we're into the middle of the order, and hopefully we've got a couple of runners on.
I hope I'm batting cleanup because I'm going after Dro and Vito, okay? These two guys are on suicide watch. It is unbelievable to me. Okay, they made it sound like Hodgson was the second coming of God, and if we don't get him, then, oh, my God. Look, the reality is there are three different types of fans, okay? There are diehard basketball, they grew up with the Big East and Pearl and Boeheim, and I can go on and on and on. Then there's the fans at the Dome, and I'm talking about fans at the Dome, and some would rather you're going to see at the basketball games, and then you could see those same people at the Syracuse, baseball games. Those are just people who like to get out and do things. Then there's the people who like all the sports, the lacrosse and the football, the basketball, and all those are fine. I'm not placing any judgment on them, but this is a basketball town, and let me go back to maybe just before your time, maybe not. Do you remember when people in this town used to call the airways, and they used to literally say it was some years they would rather be in the NIT and make a run than lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament?
No, I don't remember that, but that's a pretty wild take.
People used to have that narrative, and it used to drive me nuts. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. Some fans just have a weird way of looking at stuff. It's like, do I go to the movies or do I go to a basketball game? That's not most of the people that are calling your show. We are passionate about Syracuse basketball, and it's been a mess. But what I'm getting at is two things are probably going to be in place better. Hopefully three things are better in place next year than this current year. One is the AD. Okay, people can say what they want about Wild Act. But the whole relationship going back to Boeheim, okay, the Boeheim Wild Act thing was not ideal, okay? Boeheim needed older adults need a filter, and they need a boss. Trust me. I'm in the industry. I know it like the back of my hand, and that was a problem that Wild Hack and Boeheim. And now the reason I'm bringing it up, people are like, why is he bringing it up? Here's a damn good reason why I'm bringing it up. People like Jeff Goodman and, Orzilla and some of these guys are all noting too, Boeheim lingering does affect incoming coaches. Now, obviously, if it's Jerry, that's different. Hopkins, whatever. But if you don't think that, Brian Blair has somebody up his sleeve, and who that person is that might be up his sleeve, if Boeheim is in the back of their mind, lingering around the program with his little office in the corner, it absolutely is.
I just can't get there with this one, Pat. I'm sorry. I feel like you bring up Boeheim a little bit too much. Could it be a slight factor that they were declining?
Okay. What I'm saying to you is Boeheim, to go on ESPN just last week, okay, and he defamated the program by saying we were bottom three in NIL. To me,
Look,
that was a step too far.
I understand taking his comments and thinking he said that, which he definitely could have phrased it better because there's no way they're bottom 3 in NIL,
Right.
and I don't think he thinks that. So,
Well, he said it.
Okay, you're right to get on him for saying that because that's not right, and he didn't phrase it correctly, or if he thinks that, he's wrong, and I don't think he thinks that. So that's fair to critique him for saying that, and he's an opinionated guy, and there's a lot of stuff that we could come on here and say he said this, and then he changed his mind on that, and all those things. All I'm saying is it just feels like we're overplaying the Boeheim angle to this. It feels like
I didn't bring this up. National writers, national journalists, national people who are talking about this are the ones speaking about it.
Yeah, but I think they're speaking.
I don't know why you're pointing the finger at me.
No,
I am bringing up what other guys said.
I don't really recall seeing national writers pointing it at Boeheim.
Tim, tell you what I'll do. I will flip it for you, and I will literally send it to your Twitter.
Okay,
because
great.
Now you're insulting my intelligence.
No, I'm not
as invested on this as anybody in this place.
I'm
and
not
if you
saying you're wrong, Pat. I'm
you
not.
Literally are.
I'm literally saying I haven't seen it. So send it to me, and then we can have more of a. I have not seen it so far. So please send it to me. But let's not get into a yelling match here. Let's stay on track.
Right. So just to stay on track, and I digress. Tim, you're a great guy. This is a frustrating time. You got a lot of different opinions floating around there, but what I'm saying is I am dead stark in the middle. I will not say I am not going to support this program, and if Jerry or Hop is the coach, there's a lot of people. I mean, your last caller was just stating himself that there's a lot of people that are saying that, and that's crazy. Like, to me, what I was getting at before we got off track is real simple. I think next year I'm going to have more confidence in our AD, our head coach, and hopefully the NIL. And that third piece is the most important piece.
Right.
And I also agree with what he was saying, that it does need to be more streamlined. I think you pulled that out of what he was really saying about, streamlining the NIL so that a lot of people can give a little bit. That's the key to NIL in Syracuse. So my takeaway is this, okay? The timing for Hodgson, what is your take? Because my take is that he's saving his own face, and hopefully Brian Blair has a plan up his sleeve. What is your take on the timing of Hodgson? Because I think he's just saving face.
Yeah, I think the timing makes me think that maybe the agent was trying to save face a little bit. Don't know that. I'm speculating, but I think it's fair to speculate that right now. And I'm interested if we will ever get that answer and if we will ever get clarity on it. I view it more as Brian Hodgson is out of the running instead of he turned down the job. But I do think that Brian Hodgson probably, his expectations of what Syracuse could provide from a financial package were not met. And maybe that led to the conversation then being kind of two-sided. We can't see eye to eye here, and we're both moving on. However, he moved on. If it was him starting it, if it was Syracuse, I think it was a resources debate that they could not come to the table and come to an agreement on resources, probably.
I think the timing is going to end up working out. I would rather get it done now than string it along and then have him pick Providence, at the end. So it is what it is. There's also some shady things about Hodgson. Obviously, how he was talking trash to Autry's kid after the game, saying there was a lot of reports on that. I don't know the validity. I wasn't there, and neither were you. But that was one thing. There's a lot of other stuff that's been in question about Hodgson. So you know what? Syracuse will I believe will be okay. Okay. And the last thing I'll say is we've already lowered the bar. If a guy comes in next year and gets him in the tournament, even if we lose in the first or second round, even though we'll be pissed when we lose, he'll be the savior. So the bar's been lowered because of Boeheim, period.
All right, Pat. He had to hang up at the end there. All I was trying to say with the Boeheim discussion, and I feel like we kind of reeled it back in there. It didn't get too hostile. I just don't view Boeheim as some of you just keep bringing up Boeheim. And if we're ranking what are the most important reasons for Syracuse declining as a program, I feel like we've spent too much oxygen on the Jim Boeheim component of it. And I feel that Pat, I would love him to send me those clips from a Jeff Goodman, like he said, saying that Boeheim is part of the problem here, or Boeheim is still being talked about. Right now, it's pretty clear that every national pundit or any national college basketball reporter, when they talk about the Syracuse job and why it has slipped, it's more because of the NIL resources. Boeheim is maybe a small factor, or the fact that Boeheim overstayed or stayed into a time period where the program was declining a little bit is a small factor maybe. So I wasn't trying to completely deny Pat from that standpoint, but I just feel like we've got to just move on from Jim Boeheim and stop using that as a crutch, or stop thinking that Jim Boeheim's influence still on the program is something that is holding Syracuse back. I just don't think that it's right to say Jim Boeheim is still influencing the program to this day. So, Pat, hopefully that didn't upset you more. You can hop on in the Q Sports Talk chat. We can continue the conversation if you'd like. I think there's a lot of people that are mad at you in the Q Sports Talk chat. They wanted me to call you out for saying that Hodgson was a done deal at one point. I truthfully don't remember Pat saying that. But honestly, I can't keep up with every caller and what they said, and maybe that was said. There's plenty of people out there that thought Bryan Hodgson was coming. It seems like he's not coming. We have to work in a timeout. We'll get back to more of your thoughts on the phone lines at 315-437-7644. You're listening to Drive Time.
Did you miss Drive?
Yeah, have you guys seen these clips? We went quickly into Pat. I was insulting his intelligence. I was not, Pat. I just wanted you to send me the clips. Goodman did say it, R. Curtis. He said Boeheim's part of the problem. I feel like I've heard everything Goodman said about Syracuse for the last couple months, and I just didn't get the impression that that was one thing that he was saying a lot. Or that's kind of out there that, like, national writers keep saying it. Can't even keep up on the chat here. What else has been said? Paulie knows heard it. Someone send the clip. We need the clip. Goodman is a jerk. Yeah, Goodman's very polarizing. I'm learning. I mean, I knew that, but... Did Pat really... Phone's ringing out there. Did Pat really say that Hodgson was a done deal? He say it on my show? I don't remember him saying that. I must have missed it on a different show. Next general manager? Sure, Sebastian Louise. Who you got? You got a candidate? I mean, we got to figure out who the head coach is for that, probably. Oh, man. Pat gets people excited. I'm getting all these texts. Pat was at level 5. Done deal, yeah. I do remember, I think Vito. I get Vito and Jerome mixed up. I'm sorry. Those are the two Clays. You guys keep better track of this stuff than me. I do remember, I think it was Vito, maybe it was Dro. Dro was saying, how could we lose out to Providence? And he went on a rant about that. I think Vito did say done deal. Plenty of people said done deal. There's a lot of misinformation, or there's a lot of people out there that are just really excited to think they've got the source or they've got the insider. as Mike Tirico said. And Mike Tirico, once again, said it way more eloquently than any of us could say it. There's a lot of misinformation, and when you're on the inside of something, you probably, Tirico was saying, you get a better appreciation for how much out there is just not right. Yeah, I don't think, did Pat ever say it was a done deal, or are you just saying like his friends, his crew was saying it? Yeah, Pat did. He jumped into hostile territory. I had to rein him in a little bit. We haven't had a good one like that in a while. Pat and I have been a little bit more cordial this year. Is Pat in the chat? He's probably mad at how I ended it after the phone call. I don't view Boeheim's influence as some thing that needs to be criticized right now. He has an office, but trust me, I don't think Boeheim is making any decisions. He's not drawing up any plays. He's not around as much as you guys think. I think that's blown out of proportion a little bit. Vito, you're here. Did you say done deal? Yeah, I think there were negotiations for sure. Like I said, I think Bryan Hodgson was wanted initially. It might have just been that we'll never know, probably. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to keep up. Maybe you already answered that question. I did say that. Very close source saying it was done. He was wrong. Yeah, I heard from other people that were saying it was done too. I think we just got to let it play out a little bit, but I'm not... Good on you for being in here and owning up to it, and you're perfectly fine to say something like that. And look, I've been wrong 1,000 times about stuff, and I'll continue to be, and that's fine. We all got to take a deep breath as we come back into drive time. 315-437-7644. Pat was truly the cleanup batter there. We went a while. Don't know if he knocked in any runs. That's up for your interpretation. But I figured Pat was going to be bringing it. As someone said in the chat, that was a level 5 phone call from Pat. It certainly was. And there's a lot to get to today. There's a lot on all of your minds, and I understand some of you are upset, and I encourage you to call in, and we can hash all this out at 315-437-7644. Let's go next to Matt, who is in East Syracuse. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Tim. I won't yell at you this time.
I will try not to insult your intelligence either, Matt.
Listen, I like Pat's takes. Like, I do a lot of driving. I'm in medical sales. I drive Albany to Buffalo. I live in Syracuse. I listen to you guys all the time. I generally like listening to Pat. But that was, holy cow, that was nuts. Anyway, so I wanted to just obviously touch on, the mood of the day here. But, I was a little depressed last night when I opened up Twitter after I put my daughters to bed and saw that, he had removed himself from the search. I was in the Team Hodgson camp. I really, I think he's a great coach. And, obviously his track record speaks for itself. I did call into the show a few years back when Brent Axe had his show. And I remember specifically after Jim Boeheim walked off the floor of the ACC tournament, and it seemed like it was over for him at that point. I remember calling in saying Jerry McNamara deserves this job, and I think a lot of it was we were at that last game at the Dome. Me and my father-in-law, we saw Jerry give that speech on the Dome floor, and it made me feel like this guy is the future leader of this program. I think Jerry will be a great 1A option. I think that's definitely on the table, and I think he's, he would be a worthy candidate for the job. But I do want to say in a previous life, I was a TV sports anchor down in West Virginia, probably about a decade ago. And I got to know a coach really well by the name of Jared Calhoun.
Okay.
So he was at Fairmont State University, Division II school in West Virginia. I was covering him down there. And he did a phenomenal job. I mean, I'm saying, you want to say level 5 energy, he was like a level 10 energy.
Okay.
His teams were relentless. And, he comes from that Bob Huggins coaching tree. We know Bob has, his share of hiccups in the past, but in terms of him being a coach, we know he was a hell of a coach. But when it comes to Jared Calhoun, obviously his track record speaks for itself. He's 54-14 in a couple seasons at Utah State, laid him back to the big dance this year. I think he would be kind of an under-the-radar hire that a lot of people around here would be really thrilled with. He may not be like the first option that people think of right now, but this is a guy who, I mean, he's been phenomenal. Also, one more thing I'll throw in. This was a couple of years ago, actually last year, the Eddie Lampkin team. But remember that game when Youngstown State took Syracuse to three overtimes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we all remember that one.
Unfortunately,
so He helped build that roster at Youngstown State. He was there for a couple of years and then moved on to Utah State. So a lot of us saw that game and how tough that Youngstown State team was. He was a big reason for why, that team was as good as they were, and they took Syracuse to the brink. I think he would be a great hire, for Bryan Blair in his first year.
Yeah, good call, Matt. I appreciate you checking in. That's Matt in East Syracuse. So we got to get to more of the callers, but I agree. Jared Calhoun is a name that I would definitely give a call to. Seems like the early reporting is that he is interested in Cincinnati and Cincinnati is interested in him. So you'd probably have to beat out Cincinnati. You'd probably have to beat out other schools for Jared Calhoun. Not saying Syracuse can't do that, but it does seem like if you were trying to make an educated guess right now, Jared Calhoun to Cincinnati is probably the best educated guess at the minute. But I do like that we're hearing from some people that thought Hodgson was the best candidate, but they also are going to get behind Jerry McNamara. I think that's a perfectly reasonable take to say, I like Hodgson. I liked McNamara. I was kind of hoping for Bryan Hodgson, but at the same time, I think Jerry is a good candidate as well. I just don't understand the take of Bryan Hodgson is prime Phil Jackson or prime John Wooden, and we missed out on him, and now we are completely doom and gloom, and we have to fire our next head coach before he's even hired, and we got to fire the AD before he even got here, and I'm going to stop giving money to the program, and I'm done even interacting with Syracuse sports because they couldn't get Bryan Hodgson. I can't get my head around that one. I can't get my head around thinking he was a 10 times better candidate than, say, Jared Calhoun or Jerry McNamara or someone that they might hire instead of Bryan Hodgson. Let's go next to Dave in Syracuse, who is next up on the show. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Tim. Very spirited show today.
Yeah, we sort of expected that one, I guess. So who knows when we're ending the show today at this rate.
Absolutely. Listen, my question is on comments on Bryan Blair. I've kind of been waiting for a press conference to introduce him, and we'd all like to hear him speak and get to know him and just see him and live. And I just saw there's something tomorrow at 10 o'clock, correct?
Yes, 10 a.m. tomorrow. You can watch it on QSportsTalk.com.
Okay, so that's his introduction.
Yes.
Introductory. Yep. Okay, excellent. I was thinking, my God, the first time we hear from this guy is going to be when he announces his new coach, and that makes no sense to me. So I'm glad they're doing this. I'm sure he's going to be right back at the podium, maybe in a week, announcing his decision for coach. So really that was what I was wondering was happening, because we hired him last week. We haven't heard from him. We don't know what he's all about yet. And so tomorrow is going to be his introductory press conference. Glad to hear it. I'm excited about what's happening. I do think it's going to be Jerry. I said it a number of times. I always, from the minute he left the court as a player, that he was going to be back here. He is just Syracuse through and through, much like Jim Boeheim was. And we'll see what happens. So actually, my phone call was just to find out what the deal was with Bryan Blair.
Yeah, press conference tomorrow. Thanks for checking in, Dave in Syracuse. 10 a.m. tomorrow. You can watch it on our YouTube page, QSportsTalk.com. It'll be the typical introductory press conference from an athletic director. I'm sure that Syracuse might have even John Wildtack there. I'm sure that Chancellor Haney will be there. They'll speak about him, why they chose him. Bryan Blair will give his introductory comments, most likely, and then it will be open to a Q&A with the media. That's 10 a.m. tomorrow for that press conference, and you can watch it here on QSportsTalk.com. Let's get in one more before we take our final break. Let's go to Dro in Clay, who is next up. And Dro, last time we talked, I think it was, you were yelling about how they can't lose Bryan Hodgson to Providence. So are you doing all right now? We need to first start with a wellness check.
Honestly, I'm annoyed, to be honest with you. I mean, not at you. I'm annoyed at the process. Like, you have a legitimate coach here. Pat and Syracuse for years, we need to go outside the family. We need to do this. We need to do that. Now we have a chance to go outside the family because I'm okay with Hopkins or McNamara. My opinion is nothing against those two. We need to go outside the Boeheim family tree. We need a fresh start. You had an opportunity to get a legitimate coach, and who knows what the university did? They're like Jerry Jones.
But isn't Jerry a legitimate coach, Stro? Like, that's where I lose you a little bit. You just said you had an opportunity to get a legitimate coach.
Jerry is a legitimate coach. He's only been senior 2 years. Bryan Hodgson's been through the ringer. Not that Jerry's a legitimate. Let me rephrase that. Jerry is a legitimate coach. So is Mike Hopkins. We need to be outside the Boeheim family tree. That's all I'm saying. We need to get a fresh face, some new perspective. That's where I'm at, and that's what my frustration is. And it looks like the university does not want to go that route. I have no idea what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going. I have no idea what their plan is, but they like to be cheap like Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys. Get the cheapest hire and hope that it works out. That's what I think the university is going to end up doing. I have no idea what they're going to do. But I think losing Bryan Hodgson's a big deal. You not only lost in Providence, you could lost in USF. That's how bad the NIL up there is at the university. I also think you have a lot of donors up there who donate a lot of money who are fighting with each other because they want their own guy, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a complete travesty. It's a mess. And I don't know what else. I don't have any other answers on what's going to happen with the program going forward, but they better get this right.
I do agree. It's an important hire. Can we drill down a little bit on why you are so convinced that they should go outside the family? And I'm not saying that you are completely off base here. I'm just trying to get that perspective a little bit more because that's out there for sure. And I think there are a lot of people that are listening right now and they agree with you. So tell me why you feel that Jerry could not succeed because he knew Jim Boeheim, or give me, I guess, specific details on why you think it is the end of the world or the wrong decision right now if they did hire inside the quote-unquote family.
Well, looking back, what they should have done was back in 2018, Jim should have left, became a dad, and watched his son play college basketball. Given the keys to Mike Hopkins, the program is set up for success. Jim decided he wanted to play daddy ball, and that's the reality of what happened. He wanted to play daddy ball, and I think what happened was the program has diminished.
So you think Mike Hopkins would have been successful in 2018, but you don't think he would be successful now?
I don't know.
Okay.
But what I do know is if there was a problem back then, it would have been taken care of now, instead of 10 years later, still dealing with the same garbage of this SU basketball mess. That's all. So going back with everything, Autry unfortunately didn't work out. I think we just need a new perspective of what's going on, because what's been going on the past 10 years, the Boeheim way, hasn't worked. And I'm a big Jim Boeheim supporter. I defend the guy more than anyone. I'm actually been called a homer plenty of times. I have our orange-colored glasses on. And if I'm telling you we need to go outside the family for a fresh perspective, I think people would agree. If Dro says it's time to move on and we're in trouble, then you better listen. Because when I throw the white flag up, that means we're in trouble. That's how it is. And I'm a positive, upbeat guy. But I just think we need a new perspective of people up there. It's nothing against Jerry. It's nothing against Mike Hopkins. It's nothing against Jason Hart. Herman Hareed, I don't care, whoever wants to come. Get outside the family right now. I just think we need a new perspective. But it has to be the right hire. Bryan Hodgson was a buzz. Outside the family, as close to that family as you can get. The guy grew up a Syracuse fan, grew up in Western New York. The bigger concern is, does he not want to come here, and why is that? He's from Western New York. We can't even get our own people in our own state to come coach at Syracuse. They'd rather go to Rhode Island or South Florida. That's the bigger problem right there. What is the university doing wrong up there? World Head came out and said, we're going to strike big here. Well, he better have something up his sleeve, because right now you have a lot of irate Syracuse fans, and people are losing their patience. That's it. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating as a Syracuse fan. And I don't know if it's getting any better up there. But I don't know. I want to be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think this program's in a lot of trouble. I think we're heading down a DePaul, Georgetown route where we may not get out of this. And you may look back and just cherish the good times you had as a fan, because I think this ship is sinking, and it's sinking fast.
All right, Drew, I got to keep it moving. There's more callers to get to, but I appreciate you checking in. And I was just trying to get his answer a little bit more clarified for me, because I guess I just don't understand why Jerry McNamara should be ruled out because he's had an interaction with Jim Boeheim before. I don't view it as much that Jerry is going to come in and do things the Boeheim way, because I saw Coach Autry and how different he did things in terms of running a practice from Coach Boeheim. And I know that Coach Autry is a different person from Coach Boeheim, and I know that Jerry is a different person from Coach Boeheim as well. So I'm just trying to understand why it feels like a lot of you are so dead set on don't go inside the family. And I think a lot of it, I'm guessing, and Drew didn't really say it, maybe some of it is you just feel like they could do better and they should open up the search and they should not just settle for someone that has ties to the program. But I think I made this point before that a lot of searches start with who has ties to the program. And a lot of schools do try and tap into their family, their alumni base. And I want to know, if you are a firm believer that Jerry is a big mistake right now, would you come off that stance a little bit if you found out that Jerry would bring in more NIL, more resources than someone that is outside the family? Is there a number or a difference in the budget that would make you think, hey, actually, maybe they should go the route of GMAC or they should go the route of Mike Hopkins? Maybe think about that if you're someone that firmly believes they should go outside the family. Let's take our final break. We'll get to more of your thoughts on the phone lines as we continue on Drive Time. You're listening to it on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Be sure to tune into Mike.
The lines, there is one line open. Maybe that's you calling right now. It's about to be filled. If Q Speedball, I think that's Vito, right? Didn't you just say that was you, Vito? Maybe that's you calling. Kyle, that's line one. I'm sorry, man. It's ringing. We got two. Now we'll be full with all three lines once Kyle, he just picked it up. Yeah, we're going into extra innings for sure. Can't help it these days. If Drew says it's time, you know it's time. Just weird to me that, Drew, you're a fan of Boeheim, but you don't want anyone that's ever associated with him. You claim you're a Boeheim defender, but you think it's the worst thing ever that... You didn't say worst thing ever, but I don't know. Some people are just so anti the family. Am I alone in this? Who in the chat thinks that I'm off here? Let's talk about it. S. Lou says GMAC would be more of a mistake from his standpoint to come home right now. What if we skip Jerry and he is successful? Oh, Cuse missed out, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not so sure that if Jerry doesn't get the call this time that he would come back. I mean, I tend to think Jerry will be successful in his next job. Yeah, Jim Boeheim, he's just can't escape these airwaves. He's still a talking point. Tim, would Drew, Pat, and Vito take Rick Pitino as head coach? Probably. That's not happening. I think GMAC's a great communicator. Great interview. Oh, we did get Vito on the line. Good. Now we're coming at Dro's Cowboys. Jeez, it's getting personal. Yeah, Dro, Vito, and Pat were taking shots at each other. Well, we haven't even heard from Vito yet. We'll see. I think a basketball hire, I'm scrolling up Philly's Most Wanted. I think a basketball hire will be made before that meet and greet, yes. I don't know if it means it's a certainty, but I do think they will make a hire before that. Philly's Most Wanted. Timmy, you wanted Hodgson at one point. Don't you cover women's basketball? What are your thoughts on a men's basketball assistant sleeping with a women's player? Ryan Mullen, you heavily support the women's program. What's your thought on that? I don't know that is factual, and if it is true, obviously that changes your opinion. I mean, I think I've heard some stories about Bryan Hodgson, and I mean, if you go look at his current wife, it seems easy to connect dots that she was probably a student when he was a coach at Alabama, but I don't know that for sure. I don't think I did necessarily want Hodgson as my top pick, but I think I have said that I thought he'd be a good hire. But Philly, I would also say that that's the stuff that maybe has gone under the radar a little bit. Like, he is a wild card from what I've heard, and I don't know how well he would have meshed, and I did say that earlier in the show. So if I was interviewing him, if I was doing due diligence on him, I would try to get more clear answers on that stuff, but I don't have concrete answers. I know you're saying I can promise that's factual, but I can't promise it's factual myself, so.
ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Well, they blew up a chicken man in Philly last night. Now they
Syracuse basketball program is blowing up, according to some of you, as we bring you back on Drive Time. 315-437-7644. Phone lines are jammed right now, but as soon as we get done with Nigel in Rochester is going to be next up, then we'll have an open line open. And, I mean, my show is technically from 5 to 6, and it's 6:11. So at some point, I do want to leave here and eat dinner and have a normal night. But I will continue to take your phone calls if you'd like, and you feel like calling in on this big day and big week and big time period in Syracuse athletics. Let's go out to Rochester for Nigel. I hope I'm saying that right. Maybe correct me if I'm saying that wrong, but you're next up on Drive Time.
Hey, no, sorry. It's Nadal. It's totally fine. It's not the
Oh, that's
common
not how
name
it
in the
was
world.
spelled. Okay. I see an N-E-G-A-L. How do you spell it so we get it right next time?
Yeah, N-E-D-A-L.
Okay.
Like the
Nadal.
tennis player, Rafa. Yeah. No, I've called him before.
Okay. Sorry, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, everyone's blood's pumping right now, so I totally understand.
Exactly.
No, I mean, I don't really understand all this animosity towards Jim Boeheim. I mean, Dro mentioned that the ship is sinking, but can I remind him who built that ship and built Syracuse into one of the winningest programs in college basketball? I mean, there's no denying that he is an ideological leader in college basketball, and one of his ideologies was that college players shouldn't be paid. And he also believes that college coaches shouldn't be paid. He took a massive pay cut to be at Syracuse for as long as he did.
Yeah, I don't know if he truly believes, has he said that? Like college players shouldn't be paid? I feel like he's not happy with the current state of college sports like a lot of coaches, right?
No, yes. So he actually came to, I mean, I've heard him say this multiple times.
Okay.
He came to Rochester General Hospital last year, spoke with Dr. Feitel, one of the cardiologists here, and he brought him over. He spoke to us, like it was kind of like a guest lecture type thing. And he said, he didn't believe that college basketball players should be paid, and it makes sense. I mean,
gotcha.
He didn't pay Carmelo. He didn't pay Mark Carter-Williams, and a lot of other players that could have definitely taken a lot of money to play. And that's part of the reason why they came to Syracuse, and they did very well for us. And he, at the same lines, he got us he won March Madness, and he did it on probably half the salary that some of the other coaches are getting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, Nadal, that when I asked you that question, you didn't think that I was insulting your intelligence. You just answered it. So.
No, for sure.
What else you got?
For sure. I mean, I'm just happy that this year is over. I mean, from the start, all we were talking about is NIL this, NIL that. And, I mean, no offense to some of the other broadcasters, but I mean, the post-game shows would not be about the game. It would be, again, another discussion about NIL, which I totally understand why it goes that way. But I mean, I would come on to hear about the game, and we would instead be talking about how much money Donnie Freeman's getting instead of how did Donnie Freeman play and why they think he didn't play well or why he did play well. So that's why I want an outside hire, just because I don't want to hear it anymore for the rest of the year. So
you would not be happy if it's Jerry McNamara necessarily?
No, I would be ecstatic.
Sorry.
But I would not be happy about hearing from Dro that Jim Boeheim is the worst thing to happen to Syracuse.
Yes. Okay. Well, apparently Dro is a Jim Boeheim defender, so that didn't really jive with what he was just saying. Yeah, I hear you.
You can't have both. I mean, he was a thought leader of the time, and he brought us the zone. He brought us great players. He brought us great basketball. He didn't believe players should be paid, so they didn't. And should the university have maybe considered the state of college basketball a little bit better? Sure, but that's not on him. He's entitled to his opinions, and he's deserved his opinions. And he deserved to watch his kids play.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, the daddy ball take, Buddy Boeheim's still in the NBA right now. I mean, he's on a G League team, but Buddy Boeheim went on a long run in the NCAA tournament and was one of the best players on that team and did some great things at Syracuse. So
1,000%. He was on the Thunder, who are known to recognize and develop good talent. So he didn't go to like a bad team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there haven't been a lot of guys from Syracuse recently that have played in the NBA as long as Buddy Boeheim. So maybe adding Jimmy Boeheim is more daddy ball, but he was only here for a year, and Jim, I think, was honest that he had to get better, and he did get better a little bit before he came for that grad year. All right, Nadal, we appreciate you checking in. That's Nadal in Rochester. Let's go next to Jeff in Oswego, who's been waiting patiently. Hey, Jeff.
How you doing, Tim? You kind of echoed my sentiments there about Jim Boeheim. I wasn't going to call in until I heard Dro's comments. This guy with the daddy ball stuff. I mean, Buddy was in the NBA. And as far as Jerry goes, if Dro ever listened to Jerry McNamara's show, he had a show a couple years ago. It was absolutely fantastic. He describes basketball. It's like a chemistry lab. This guy knows basketball. He knows X's and O's. On top of that, he's probably one of the most determined guys to ever come through the program. He's a proven winner. He's a local celebrity. I want to see Jerry on the sidelines. Jim Boeheim was a celebrity. Jerry McNamara is beloved in this community. Yeah. I think guys like Dro are an absolute minority, and that guy needs medication, and I'm glad I never had to work with Dro, because he's that guy that you stay away from at work. I'll end with that.
All right, Jeff.
Have a great day, Tim.
Thank you for checking in. I do like hearing from a lot of you that would be supportive of Jerry McNamara, because there's a lot of reasons to support GMAC, and I don't think that we should view, if they do hire Jerry, as, oh, they went cheap, they're not serious, they're not doing a national search. I just think Jerry McNamara being the best candidate right now makes logical sense. If you thought that Bryan Hodgson was a better candidate, you can definitely have that opinion. And you can have any opinion you want on Jerry, and we'll see how it plays out. But the opinion I don't like the most is, and I can't understand, I guess, the most, is just because Jerry associated himself with Jim Boeheim, he can't be a good head coach. And if they hire Jerry, I'm going to give up and I'm not going to go to games. And I don't think that that is a majority opinion, but it feels like that is a maybe vocal minority on Twitter, that opinion. Let's end with Vito and Clay. He's going to be our last caller here on our 5 to 6 p.m. show at 6:18. We are well into the extra innings, and we've got Vito, who is next up on Drive Time. Hey, Vito.
Hey, man. Yeah, so I got a few points I want to make, but that last caller just made me laugh. Let me just say something real quick. Obviously, a lot of people know I know Dro personally. I also know Pat. Dro is not on meds. He's doing quite well. He's just a worried fan like everybody else. He dedicates a lot of his money, a lot of his time, his family to the program, and he made a great point. By the way, that last caller sounded like he was on meds, but he made a great point. We do not want to go the way of DePaul and Georgetown. This is a crucial point in the program's history, and the look, the optics of a guy like Bryan Hodgson from a mid-major, probably. I guess USF is a mid-major, right, Tim?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, so a guy like that, if it comes out that he turned down Syracuse, that looks bad on so many levels, which leads me to my next point, NIL. I'll tell you a quick story. I delivered pizza during college back in 2003 when Julius Hodge spurned Syracuse for NC State. And I delivered to this dude, and he looked familiar, and he was actually a coach or a member of the staff of the basketball team. And I said, what the heck happened? This is a true story. What happened with Hodge? Well, did he get a bag? He said he did. And I said, can you tell me how much? He said this. He said $75,000. And I don't know how he knew, but that's what he said. My point is, how is NIL being managed these days? So do bags like that get dropped anywhere now? Is the NCAA watching that? We have the biggest alumni in terms of you have pro athletes all over the place from Syracuse. You have broadcasters with deep pockets like Tirico, Bob Costas, and all these guys. How is it that they raise $8 million, and the difference between a successful roster in this crazy NIL market is $2 to $7 million? Why can't they raise that extra $2 to $7 million to make us competitive? And if that's the reason that Hodgson turned them down, because they wouldn't take it from 8 to like say 13 million or whatnot, that's disappointing. If they can't get that extra, they got the best venue in NCAA basketball with the Dome, and they can't raise that extra few million. What's the deal with that, Tim?
So I think couple things. The biggest thing with how much money can you raise ultimately comes down to how many millionaire, billionaire donors do you have. So can we agree, Vito, that Syracuse probably has less millionaire, billionaire donors than, say, Ohio State or, say, and I think you're going to counter with, well, Providence shouldn't be able to outraise them. And I think that's a fair counter for sure. But let's just start from a standpoint of it's not like Syracuse is in an ideal situation to gather money, considering the community, considering the alumni base compared to other schools, right?
Now, here's the thing. Are you done with your point? I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So there was a list that came out a couple days ago, the top NIL rosters in terms of how much money was spent. I didn't see UConn in that list. And I'm guessing they're going to be somewhere between 8 and 10 million. I think the lowest amount on there was 10 million. That just goes to show you that Danny Hurley's hitting it out of the park. He's maximizing, his roster. And, that's what worries me. I think a lot of people are worried, including Dro, that you got a relatively unproven candidate with GMAC coming in. And you got a guy, Hodgson he's killing it. The last game they looked awesome. And I think they're going to beat Louisville this week. But I'm going to get behind GMAC 1,000%.
Yeah.
If he's on the side, I wanted the outside hire. I'll be honest with you. And that last caller was saying he's in the minority. Dro. No, if you go on the message boards, I've seen polls, and 80% or more of the people want a national search. So he's wrong on that.
That's not the entire fan base, though, right? I mean, the message boards is a portion of the fan base. We can agree on that.
It's diehards. I get it. Yeah. It's diehards. But I think that is somewhat reflective of the fan base. It might not. It'll definitely at least half. But I will be up behind him, and Joel will be behind GMAC if that's the ultimately the choice. And I think that when I watched him, I called after when they beat Merrimack, and I didn't watch them all year, a couple times, but he is an awesome in-game coach, complete antithesis of Autry. He's walking down the sidelines, he's yelling instructions. Doty stops, looks at him, gets instructions, and goes and does exactly what he asks. That's the kind of coach they need, and I will be behind him 100%, even though it would have been nice to see, a great coach like Hodgson go with Syracuse. So that's all I got, man.
That's exactly the take that I said is completely fine to have, Vito. So I appreciate you checking in to wrap up the show here. I totally understand if you think they should have gone to Bryan Hodgson and that was their top guy, and it seems like that may have been their top guy. We don't know how it all played out necessarily, and who knows if we'll learn more on exactly what was the full story on Bryan Hodgson being out of the running for the Syracuse job. But I just don't get if you thought Bryan Hodgson was a no-brainer, definitely hire him, then thinking that GMAC, who is pretty similar, I would say, in terms of his resume to this point. Yes, South Florida is an 11 seed and Sienna's a 16 seed, but you got to keep in mind the situation. And obviously, South Florida is a step above Sienna, and maybe GMAC, you could make the case, needs to be a little bit more seasoned at a level like a South Florida. So you can definitely believe that Hodgson is above GMAC. That's a perfectly reasonable take. But I guess I just have never gotten to the point where I think that it's like tier 1 Hodgson, tier 2 no one, tier 3 GMAC, and he's 2 tiers below, or he's well below. Because when you stack up their blind resumes, they're around the same age. They've been coaching as a head coach for around the same time. I mean, Buffalo turned down Bryan Hodgson to be their head coach not that long ago because they thought he wasn't mature enough, is some of the reporting I've seen. Now, I maybe shouldn't just go out there and say that that's definitely what happened, because a lot of the reporting we're seeing online is not exactly what happened, but that's kind of what I've been hearing too. So, again, I don't view him as the only answer or the only guy that could have fixed this. I think the most important thing is what is the resource package, and you couple that with a good head coach. And I think Jerry could do well from an NIL resource package. I think a lot of guys could come in and be successful in this job. And I don't think it needs to be doom and gloom around here just because Bryan Hodgson is out of the running. Certainly, it's frustrating if it is true that he sized up his offers and thought Providence was a better offer. And you could make a case that that is alarming, and that's something that Syracuse needs to address. And to that, I would say it seems they are doing everything they can to address that by hiring an AD in Brian Blair, who has had a lot of success in fundraising and NIL. So let's give him an opportunity to prove that before we get mad at Brian Blair. And I like to hear from a lot of you. And honestly, there were a lot of rational callers today that said, I'm going to support GMAC. Don't be the fan that now, because you didn't get your top pick, you're just going to hate Syracuse for the rest of the time or claim that you're never going to interact with Syracuse again. Don't be that guy. Support Jerry McNamara if he's the next head coach and give him a shot. Be open-minded to it. See how it goes. And not to steal a take from Paulie, because that's always very scary when you do that. But Paulie said something today on his show. He said, on Orange Nation, Paulie and Steve's show, he said, if you are mad that Syracuse, if your takeaway was, how the heck does Syracuse not have a roster, an NIL budget that is competitive with Providence, your reaction should not necessarily be, I'm never giving money to the program ever again. It should be, okay, they need my money more than ever right now. Hopefully, if we all sort of band together and support this, kind of the way that Mike Tirico phrased it, it's going to take everyone here. But if it does get more support and less of the negative callers and more of, hey, I'm going to give to NIL and I'm going to try and contribute, then maybe we could start seeing some dividends there. So I don't understand the take of, because they're going inside the family potentially, I'm never going to give money ever again to the program. Let's just be open-minded and let's see how it shakes out from here. That concludes our very long drive time. We went 28 minutes into drive time overtime. That's our final drive time for the week, unfortunately, because of the NCAA tournament games that will be happening on these airwaves tomorrow and Friday. But at 10 a.m. tomorrow, QSportsTalk.com, you can watch the Bryan Blair press conference, the new athletic director for Syracuse. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
Did you miss Drive?